Welcome back to the Chasing the Truth. My name is Kristen Campos, and we are here with a very special guest today. Become my friend over time, and I don't know if you know this, but we'll talk about this as far as when I initially met you, which was a couple years ago. But we have Nate Boyer today. Military, Special Forces, Green Beret background, long snapper for the University of Texas, which is arguably the best college football program. The best college football program, in my opinion, and played a little bit in the NFL as well. So, and then now you're on to a totally different thing, which is acting, film producing, not editing.
Not editing.
Not editing. Nate, thank you so much for being here.
No, my pleasure, Chris.
I really appreciate you. I don't know if I've ever told you this in person, but years ago I worked at the admissions office, and I just remember you walking in, knocking on the door, and everybody at the admissions office was really confused on like how to handle your, call it, case.
I'm interested to hear this.
Yeah.
All right.
The behind the scenes, because you walked in and you hadn't gone to college. Your background was in the military, right? And I think, how old were you at the time when you?
I was probably 28 when I first walked in there. I was 29 when I officially became a student, started taking classes.
So you started the process just knocking on doors and seeing like what it took to walk on to the football team, right?
Yeah, I mean, I figured like calling up there wouldn't really be as, it wouldn't leave an impression the same way. So I came here to visit Austin and just see the campus. Like I'd gotten back from a deployment and I had a little downtime. So I came down for like a long weekend and I wanted to visit Austin and kind of get a feel for the place. This is back in 2009. And then I wanted to see the campus, and I went up there. I think it was might have been during training camp or even like spring ball. I can't remember. I feel like it was training camp. But I went up and like to a practice, just kind of walked out there. Ironically, on Frank Denius Fields, which are the practice fields.
Yeah. Frank
Denius is a World War II vet who was involved in D-Day. So we'll get into that later, I'm sure. But I went up there, just walked in, and I don't know if I did this in the admissions office too, but maybe. Do you remember, was I wearing like a uniform?
Yes, the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was fully intentional. Didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
I just made that choice because I was like, all right, they'll remember me if I show up in my uniform. So I put my dress uniform on.
Yeah.
You know, my dress, they're probably dress greens at the time. And I went up to the football, it was probably all on the same day. I went up to admissions office and visited there and met, I can't remember the woman who was in charge.
Her name is Kendra. So there's a Lisa Lockhart, which was my boss.
Okay, yeah. I remember Lisa Lockhart's name, yes.
Yeah, she was in love with you. She was like, we have to make this work.
Yes, all right, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, she did, because I didn't have great high school grades.
Yeah.
And then I'd kind of started junior college and then dropped out, and I had some unfinished, incomplete stuff. It wasn't good. Yeah. Like, the record didn't
look pretty on the resume.
No, it didn't look good.
On the transcript.
Exactly. But you know what? I did, and I can't remember. I feel like she might have even suggested this, that I try to transfer in as a sophomore. And if I had to take a few more credits to finish a year of
like at
college
ACC?
classes. I did it through Central Texas College, just online.
Yeah.
So I was still stationed in Colorado, and I did like online classes. And she was like, take the ones you know you can get A's in. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And I was like, all right. So
I'll do it.
I did, yeah. And I took like a history class, and I don't even remember what else, but basic general ed that you have to take. And it's not like it's easy. You still have to study, and like it's not.
You're still in school.
You're in school, yeah. It's almost harder in some ways online because it's all up to you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where it's like if you're in class, the teacher kind of tells you what you need to know.
Yeah.
And if you just pay attention, it's not that you don't need to study, but you don't have to go as hard.
Yeah, and I would say especially back then, because online learning wasn't a big deal.
Right.
Like now, because of COVID and everybody's really had to adjust. But back then, like to do an online class was the new age. It was the new wave of doing things. So yeah, different way of studying too, and being accountable for sure.
Right.
But yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so I showed up in my uniform and just wanted to meet you said Lisa Lockhart.
Lisa.
Wanted to meet Lisa. I wanted to go and meet. I didn't meet the coaching staff. I met like Coach Madden, Mad Dog. Jeff Madden was a strength coach back then.
Yeah.
And Coach Ken Rucker, who formerly was a running back coach, and I think at the time for Texas he was like athlete engagement or something like that. He was also like our team pastor and everything, you know.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, or whatever you call it, team chaplain.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, so I met those two, and they were like, all right, well, when are you trying to get here? And I said, well, I still have quite a bit in the military, so it'd be next year, you know.
Okay.
And they're like, oh, okay, well, you know, make sure you get in first, and then reach back out to us and let us know you're coming, and, you know, we'll try to get you a spot to come try out. Because tryouts, you can't just, like, go. There's no, like, open tryouts in Texas. It's just not like that.
Imagine if there was.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of people trying out. I mean, that's maybe not the worst thing, but I understand why they don't do it, because they just can't afford to. There's only like 100 people they can have on the team, right? Yeah, and like 80 or so are scholarships, so then the rest are walk-ons. And with that, like, they need someone who's going to not only be a relatively good athlete, so they're going to give the players a good look in the scout team and everything, but also they don't want any problems. Like, you can't be a walk-on and not be making grades or getting in trouble. Like, you got to be, you know, squared away in that regard.
Crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they want like a coach referral and
it's like getting hired for a job.
All this stuff. Yeah.
Like, you better come with some credentials.
Well, they were like, because they also asked for tape. And I didn't. I never played football before I got to Texas, so they asked for tape, and I was like, I don't know if there is any. You know, like, there's not. I'm like, it was so long ago. Yeah. You know.
You're like, I'll just play this card.
Yeah, exactly. So they were like, all right, don't worry about that part. Just.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because by that time it's probably been like 10 years since you've been out of high school.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I just remember you like walking in, and Lisa was like, she's a lover of people, and then when you have a story, but then you also have a goal of what you're trying to do, she's all in on making it work, and so you definitely knocked on the right person's door that day. But there was another man that worked there. His name was Mike Washington. I don't know if you remember him.
I probably remember his face.
Yeah, he's the one that like really campaigned for you behind the scenes with the Mike. Football program.
Thank you, Mr. Washington.
I don't remember where he played football at, but he was he wasn't the director of admissions, but he was like the assistant director or something like that. So he was definitely putting his 2 cents in with it. He's like, I'm going to push as much as I can with the football program because it's tough. You know, you're up against a lot of odds, especially if you hadn't played.
Right.
Any football. So there's a lot of like, you know, God's favor, I say, like behind the scenes, making it all work together for sure. What was because this is a year before you got out of the military. So what was the trigger in your mind at that time to say like, this is what I want to pursue? Because you're always like, and even now we'll talk about what you're doing now, but you're always on to like the next pursuit of like what it is that you're going to accomplish. Like, you didn't live in this specific, like, this is, you know, who I am and all I do, right? You were always looking for the next. Anytime I talk about you, I'm like, this guy has had like, it's like talking to 5 different people because you've had like 5 different lives. I don't know about that, but just like always in the pursuit of like the next thing for your life. You know, I think a lot of people miss that because we get stuck on one thing being our full purpose, you know? So what was that? What were you thinking when you were still in the military and choosing football of all things?
Well, I knew, so I didn't, football wasn't like a thought, a genuine thought after, you know, high school really. I actually, when I graduated high school, and like I said, I didn't play football growing up. My high school didn't even have a team, so there wasn't even an option.
So there's no film.
There's no film.
There's no film.
It would have to be from, you know, playing a Thanksgiving 2-hand touch game. Like, that's it. So I went after high school. I moved to San Diego, and I enrolled in junior college there. Ended up dropping out before the semester ended, but I actually went out for the football, baseball, and basketball teams in their off-season stuff.
Oh, wow.
Like just for
fun.
Yeah, just kind of just for fun.
Yeah.
I mean, like I love sports and I just wanted to be around it. And,
Yeah.
You know, and you know, for football, like having never played, I don't think I had much of a genuine shot. But I remember the reason that happened was I was going through like the summer workouts with the basketball team, and I was actually pretty close to making the team. I was a decent basketball player. Obviously, I'm not very big. This was at Mesa College in San Diego.
Okay.
And but then I didn't make it. But I remember when I was coming out of the locker room one day or something, and like one of the football coaches saw me and was just like, "Are you going out for football?" You know, and I was like,
Yeah.
He's like, "You should."
Yeah.
You know, I was like, okay. So I did, and didn't make that either. And then I went out for the baseball team, their off-season stuff, and I was doing pretty well with baseball, but then so I think I was going to make that team, and that was probably my best sport. But then I just dropped out. I started working on a fishing boat, and I was making pretty good money, and didn't really want to go to school at the time. Wasn't like,
was it because school wasn't your thing, or it just like wasn't motivating enough?
I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like really, I just said no. I didn't see the point personally, and I know a lot of people do this, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But just going to school if I didn't know what I was going for, if I was just going to go.
That's some wisdom.
You know, I don't know if it's wisdom. I mean, part of it was like I didn't do very well in high school, so I didn't have a lot of options. Maybe if I had done well and got into a good school, that would have made more sense, you know, without having to know what you want to do. But it just was, and no offense, I mean, Mesa College is a great community college, but it's different. It's not the same like community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's very, I mean, it is a community college, but you know what I'm saying? It's different.
It wasn't for you to flourish in versus like a big state school.
Yeah. It's just a different dynamic, and you don't really, you know, it's not like you're staying in the dorms and getting to know people and kind of like really becoming a college student.
Yeah.
It's like part of your life, but it's not really the thing. So, so I just ended up dropping out of that, and I eventually moved up to LA, interested in film and TV, you know, but I didn't really know where to start. I mean, I guess I could have maybe tried film school, but it's not cheap, and I didn't really want to ask my parents to send me to something that I were
interested in it.
You know what I mean? And I don't think they would have been, at the time, they would have been like, wait a minute, are you sure?
They would have been like deny.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, get a job, pay for it yourself.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that either. And then, you know, a year after moving to LA, 9/11 happened, and I didn't join the military right away, but it sort of put me on a different path. Yeah. So the once that happened, once I left Mesa and moved to LA, thoughts of playing sports, you know, just gone.
Yeah.
And especially football, since I hadn't played it, but just generally it was like, this is not this is not what I'm going to do.
You're like, I'm not 6'5".
Yeah.
You know,
no.
like
It's like finally settling in that it's maybe not meant to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took 10 years. But after spending time in the military and, you know, making it to the special forces, which takes a lot, physically, mentally, you know, emotionally, honestly, you really have to like commit and sacrifice quite a bit and work really hard, but you see results and changes. I remember just in basic training, seeing the changes in my body physically from 13, 14 weeks in basic, you know, and then it just only got more and more intense, and I found myself like not always the smartest guy, and certainly not like the most able as far as
like naturally talented.
Yeah. Some of those people are just very, I mean, they grew up shooting guns their whole life.
Yeah.
And they grew up around like this culture, and their parents were in the military or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I just didn't have that. So I was a little slow to the draw and all that, but I was in really good, they called me like a PT stud because I was in really good physical shape. I had
and still
strong
are.
conditioning.
You just did the Murph and like crushed it. I was like, is he finishing already?
I'm competitive, especially with myself. I get really competitive. When I know I can go harder, I just do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I kind of, through that time in the military, I developed a lot of confidence and just belief that, all right, if I put the work in, do the reps, you know, and kind of just go for it. There's no guarantees, but if I prepare myself in that way and not just dream about it, like I'd always done growing up, I actually applied myself. Yeah. Then you never know. And then if you don't make it, as long as you did everything you could, you're good with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You can go to bed at night. You earned your pillow.
Yeah, exactly. It feels less about the result,
right?
You know, and just more about the application. And so that's why I was just all right, I'll commit to this.
Yeah.
You know, I was in Iraq actually when I'd made the decision that I was going to go try out and play football, and I was like, all right, I got a year left in my contract. I'm not re-enlisting. This is what I'm going to go try and do. So I spent that year kind of getting ready.
Pick UT specifically, or
yeah, pretty much. I mean,
handpicked.
Handpicked. Yeah, I hadn't. I actually didn't apply anywhere else. I considered other backups if I didn't get into UT, because they were easier to get into. And I won't name those schools because I don't want to be rude, but they're good schools. But it's not UT.
Right.
And not that UT is the greatest at everything, but like it's a really good academic school, especially for a public. It's one of the tops in almost every department. It's obviously got amazing sports programs. I mean, I think we just like basically swept the Big 12 and like everything this year.
Yeah, we did.
Which was pretty crazy. And then Austin's a great city. You know, it was a really good mix. I remember when the the cab driver picked me up from the airport when I first got here to take me up to campus and stuff, and he saw, you know, I was in my uniform. I went straight from, I think it was a Friday, Thursday or Friday. I went straight from the airport to the campus, and he was like, "So what's your?" You know what? This would have. I know when this was. And you're dressed? I'm dressed in my uniform. I know when this was. This was honestly the first week of school in the fall of 2009.
Oh.
Because not only did I go, I totally forgot. I went to that practice on Friday, but then, or Thursday or Friday, I went to that practice, but then Coach Rucker got me a ticket to the game.
Oh, wow.
And they treated me like a recruit. So it's like, I'm this older guy. They let me come and sit with the recruits. It was pretty cool.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
that's amazing.
It was fun, yeah.
That's a testament to just like knocking on doors, and you just never know.
Exactly.
Or just asking people, you know, for what.
I mean, if you're not in the military, don't wear a uniform.
Right.
Don't need stolen valor.
Yeah.
But
don't use that tactic, but still
for sure. Just pick up the phone, write the email, just, I mean, slide into a DM. Who cares?
Yeah, nowadays.
The worst they're going to do is like, I mean, be tasteful about it, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But the worst that people are going to do are not respond. And then like, who cares? You know, or they'll just be like, not interested. All right, move on. But if you don't, and you're always you always wonder, like, I wonder if I just would have just do it. Who cares?
I'm curious about, because you just talked, going through junior college, and you let that go or quit that, right? Because it just wasn't serving you. And then you go into the military and you develop this mindset of just like total mental toughness. And what was it that developed that mindset along the way? Or do you think it was always there? Was it more because there was more accountability in the military and there was no accountability outside of that? Or
I mean, I think not always, but I think I developed, I guess, grit or whatever you want to call it, from a pretty young age, because I did compete and played sports and wasn't always the best, usually not the best player, but I would get like the coach's award for hustle or whatever, you know what I mean?
All heart.
All heart, yeah, exactly. But I think I lost a lot too. Like lost a lot of games, lost a lot of whatever it was. Like everything I would sort of. I was not typically on a good team. I probably lost way more games than won in my life, I think, on teams that I was on. And so you learn a lot with that, you know what I mean? When people don't lose, especially kids, they don't know how to handle it.
They don't learn how to lose.
But that's that's what life's 50% losing. Yeah. You know, pretty much.
Absolutely.
So that definitely helped. And then just, I maybe it comes from my parents too. They're very hardworking people, and they're not the type of people to like give up on something, you know. They're problem solvers, and just like me, they're not perfect either. Yeah. But they always showed that, and they worked really hard for me and my brother and sister, and we didn't always have a lot, but we always had plenty of support and love, and like, even though they're both working long days, my dad worked 7 days a week, 12-hour days pretty much at the horse racing track, but he still showed up for stuff when he could,
Right.
and they never really complained much, so just all that kind of stuff. And then, and then even like after high school and before the military, like when I moved up to LA, I mean, I did all that by myself. Then when I first moved out to San Diego, when I very first started, I think, my parents helped me out with a couple $100 a month or something just to make sure I was like
alive and eating.
But after that, they just, they did it, and it was good. I didn't need it. I figured I could figure it out. When I first moved to LA, I lived in my car for like 5 months, and it was totally fine. I had a sleeping bag. I would stay in a park sometimes or whatever, and I got a $30 a month membership at the YMCA. So
shower there.
I'd shower there. I'd go exercise, and it was just like, this is not so bad. Like, it's okay. And knowing that, hoping
that wasn't
that's not forever. You're 19, and it's just like, once I save up enough, I'll get an apartment. And it's just like all those things make you tough. Like, it makes you, so you develop that, what did you call it? You called it like mental toughness.
Mental toughness. And
you're just kind of used to austere environments and not getting comfortable with comforts. You know what I mean? When they come, that's great. When you get a comfy bed to sleep in, that's awesome. But you don't need it. Right. It's a luxury.
You'll be fine without it.
Oh, I forgot to tell you the cab driver what he said.
Oh, yeah.
This is the perfect description of Austin. And he goes, have you ever been here before? And I said, well, I came through town once just for a night, but I just went out to the bars with friends, and I didn't really see Austin. I didn't really get to, And he was like, oh, you'll love it. The best thing about it is everybody gets along. Like, for instance, all the cowboys smoke pot and the hippies carry guns. That's what he said. And I was like, all right, that's cool.
Welcome to Austin.
I mean, pretty much, Of course, it's more than most places anyway. I think people kind of get along that have a lot of differences here, which is good.
Absolutely. And Austin, I think, has continued to develop in that way. There's just been so many people that have moved here, and it's continued to have that same core element.
I think so too.
Yeah. What an amazing story. Well, one of the things that I did want to ask you about, and it's something that because being in lending, I work with a bunch of people, but specifically the veteran community.
Yeah.
And anytime anybody is locally in Austin, I'm like, you have to check out this organization, MVP. And you're doing an amazing thing locally, but also it's nationally as well, right?
Yeah. So it's MVP, which stands for Emerging Vets and Players. Has been around since the end of 2015. Technically, we were founded, but we started operating in April of 2016. And we started in Los Angeles, and since then we've grown to Vegas, Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Seattle, Dallas, Phoenix, and now we're starting to work here in Austin, in Jacksonville, Florida, in DC, Nashville, and hopefully New Orleans. So we're continuing to try and grow and build, and each of our chapters, when you start one, you essentially start with a group of vets and athletes. You meet up in the gym. We're doing it just monthly right now, and you train together for like 45 minutes or so, and then you huddle up afterwards, and it's peer-to-peer coaching, open forum, like nothing off the table. We just talk through our stuff, for lack of a better phrase. And, it's cool. It's you learn a lot, being around vets and athletes. Both those groups retire pretty young or get cut pretty young, or the career is over pretty young, and can struggle with that loss of identity. And, you see yourself as a veteran or an athlete. It's like you identify with this jersey or the camouflage, and you're like 25 or maybe 30 or whatever, and you feel like you've peaked and you'll never be great again. And that's a tough thing.
There's so much more to life outside of after 25 and 30 years old. I mean,
you just I think of it even more so with athletes. It's like because I felt that way when I was a little kid. It was like, this is the only thing I want to do. I just want to be an athlete. I want to be a pro athlete one day, right? And it sort of happened down the road, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was just different, and it was like those people that it just ends at by the time they get to college, or even maybe they play in college and then they get a shot whatever sport professionally and it just doesn't work out. It's like, I know that's just crushing.
Yeah, now it's like, where do you pivot?
They don't have a backup plan because they can't. If you have a backup plan in your head, you've already lost.
Right.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
if you're like focused on the plan B, it's you can't think of it as backup plans. You got to think of it as like whatever's happening next. Even if I played at 45 like Tom Brady, like you're still going to do something else after. 45 is not old.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's old. But like it's not. I mean, you're probably halfway through your life if you're a healthy person. So what you're just going to do nothing for the next 45 years? Like, no way, you know?
Yeah.
So
how have you managed to do that? Because, I mean, you went from military career, then played at UT, then at the NFL level, and then now doing what you're, I mean, you've managed to continue to like pivot, and that experience has definitely held a beacon of hope and light for all of these athletes and veterans that are trying to make those transitions. But where does that come from for you to be able to do that? Or is it just kind of innate and you've just never really thought about it?
It is innate. Haha.
You are so funny. Just a little
good.
pause, because you're hilarious in text messages. And sometimes when I get this text, I'm literally like, not just LOL, like I am laughing out loud because you're so funny. But anyway.
Good. Good. I'm not. I think you're just easily amused.
No.
Yeah, no, I don't know where that comes from. I think there's just a lot of things that I'm interested in, and I think maybe part of it comes from not wanting to have any regrets when I am on my deathbed, whenever that will be, which could be tomorrow, it could be in 50 years, like you don't know. I mean, we'll get into this in a little bit too, but like one of the guys I'm talking to about this D-Day documentary, one of the guys I'm interviewing, he's 104. He's about to turn 105, and he's super sharp, and he still drives, and he still golfs and mows his own lawn. He lives by himself in Baltimore. It's crazy. And it's just like, if you think about it, that's possible. So for me, that's 61 years from now.
Wow.
So it's like, to think that, you know,
life has ended.
Yeah, exactly. If I got all this time left, and even if I don't, but if I'd rather, it's weird, like, people are like, oh, you should live like there's no tomorrow. But then also, I would also like to live like there's 60 years of tomorrows too, and every day be, you know, pursuing something I love and care about and are passionate about, and not thinking this is over soon. Like
right. Live with the anticipation that there's still so much
So
life.
I guess a little bit of both. But,
yeah.
But I don't know. I have a lot of interests, and I think I don't want to one day wonder, you know, or wish I would have tried that thing that now I am too old to try. You know what I mean? Because I physically can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you ever go back and, like, now being in your 40s, like, go try baseball or something random?
I mean, I'm not athletic enough at this point. Maybe a knuckleball pitcher would be the only thing I could do. Yeah, no, I mean, maybe if something popped up that made sense, that I was like into and that I could actually
golf
do. Yeah, I do like the golf, but I mean, those guys are good, man. Scotty Scheffler's pretty good. You know, got some good Longhorns out there.
Yes, that's another level of mental toughness too. It's like a different.
It's hard enough playing with your friends when you don't care. And imagine like
you really did
there's
care.
like thousands of people on the course staring at you, millions on TV, and it's quiet.
Right.
And everybody's looking at you.
And the ball doesn't drop.
And you have to focus on this little stupid golf ball that doesn't. It's just like, that's crazy. It's nerve-wracking. They have crazy nerves. That's what they have. That you know, people are like, oh, they don't look like the greatest athletes, and I mean they don't. And they are athletic. Like they're definitely flexible and strong,
mobile
in certain ways, and physically gifted. And they understand the mechanics. But more than any of that, they are so focused and they just don't, they're unflappable is the word. Like they don't, stuff doesn't mess with them. Like they just have these incredible nerves.
Right. Control of these nerves.
Yeah.
In like the highest pressure situations.
Oh, I was teeing off I got to play Pebble Beach a few years ago.
Wow.
And I was teeing off on the first hole, and there's nobody. I'm playing with 3 people. Yeah. But my mom was watching.
The crowd goes wild.
Yeah. My mom was in the patio because she came out down to like see everything. So she's in the patio, like with her phone, like videoing me, and I just like topped it off the tee box like 50 feet. Because of one person was watching. You know what I mean? I can't even imagine thousands.
You're like, wait, I get to read you. Yeah. That's too funny. Well, talk to me about now what you're so excited about, which is, I mean, you've pivoted again and you're in your 5th stage of life, and you probably have 20 more to go. But being in filming, and of course you have the movie MVP, which is incredible. I watched that on Amazon Prime. And that does a really good job at building the story of what the organization MVP really is. And you acted in that movie too, so you've got some good acting skills.
I don't know about that.
And then that's led you to do what you're currently. I'm excited for you, and you're posting on your stories and stuff. Every video that you're posting, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, and it's surreal, I'm sure, to have been there. But talk to us about D-Day and with the 80th anniversary that just passed and what you're doing with that.
Yeah. Thank you. So first of all, MVP, end of 2020, during COVID, I decided to try and direct my first movie. And it, I acted in some things, I'd hosted some things, I'd produced some things, but directing was different because it's kind of all on you. You know what I mean? From a creative standpoint. Like, you have to communicate the vision, you have to have a clear vision, and then, you got to assemble the team, and make it happen. And for that movie and the limited budget that we had, it was a lot easier to not have to pay one of the actors, producers, the director, the writer.
Oh, you're like, I'll do it.
So I did all that stuff, and it was the only way we were able to make it on our budget. But then we had an incredible cast and crew. There's actually some really good actors in it, and some familiar faces if you're, a sports fan, from Michael Strahan and Howie Long to Randy Couture and Tony Gonzalez and Jay Glazer, and even, Tom Arnold makes a cameo, and all these guys did it for like nothing. And then all the veterans portrayed on screen are played by actual veterans. Oh, wow. So the rest of them were all vets as well. I really wanted to be. You chose, or did they? I cast it too. Oh, I didn't have to hire a casting director.
So they had to like audition and.
Yeah, well? some of them I kind of knew well enough and just sort of said, "Hey, I want you to play this role," and then some of them I had do self tapes. Most of them I did. Most of them I had to do at least a self tape to like. Yeah.
If they can handle the camera.
But well, they all had acting experience. So I cast. So being in LA, a lot of vets that have moved there are interested in film, and that's why they're there. So there's a good amount of them acting, and so shot that thing for like nothing, and got it done, got it through post production, and got it sold to FilmRise, and then FilmRise got it licensed by Showtime initially, which is now Paramount Plus. They swallowed Showtime up. But also, as you said, you can rent it on Prime or Apple TV and all that. But if you have Paramount Plus, it is free.
So go watch it
and
right
so,
now.
So go watch MVP. So that like, once I was done with that, it was really hard. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I knew that this is something I wanted to keep doing. Like I really enjoyed kind of crafting the story and finding creative ways to solve problems, and figure it out.
Had you ever been a part of making a movie before that? Or is this like your first experience?
I had been, like a couple other small projects where I just was a producer on, sort of helping more just with keeping the trains on the tracks. It's almost like project management is the best way to describe producing. So there's a lot of departments and there's all these things going on. And then beyond that, trying to find money, even if it's not very much, you need something to go film. And so I'd done that before, and I co-created this NFL Network series that I hosted for a couple of years called Indivisible, And it was like an Anthony Bourdain style show that was on NFL Network. And we would go to different cities and like explore the city and how does football connect people, just like Bourdain was food.
Right.
You know? So he was like my host hero. Like he's awesome. So doing that, I had, I was an executive producer and a co-creator and was like involved in helping each episode, like us connect with the people. And
right.
So you start to learn
you got
about
that experience.
Yeah. And being on some big movie sets when I'm just playing smaller roles, you watch the director and you kind of just pay attention and shadow as much as you can, and you just start to learn. And not that I have it all figured out, absolutely don't at all, but
you're like, we're learning on the go.
Yeah, we're learning on the go. But I always try to put really good people around me, really smart people.
Yeah.
And people that you know how to work with and kind of have a relationship with. So my buddy Logan Fulton, who was the DP on Indivisible, also shot MVP and was just out with us in Normandy.
Wow. Doing
this D-Day documentary. So stuff like that, kind of keeping the consistency with people. But the D-Day doc is the 80th anniversary, just happened in, June 6th. And so they had roughly 200 World War II vets back out in Normandy for the June 6th commemoration. And, the actual commemoration itself was at the Normandy American Cemetery, which is a very iconic place. They actually filmed there for the Saving Private Ryan movie.
Wow.
So if you ever see the opening to that movie and the ending, that's that place. And then, so, D-Day, for people that don't know, is like, it's the biggest invasion in American history. Essentially, things were not going great, and we kind of had to throw everything we had at this. The Germans had occupied France, and there was basically this big wall built from all along the coast, from the English Channel, like way down south of France, blocking the entire west. And the mission, the goal was basically take back France, and from the beaches, and from the sky. They had paratroopers jumping in, that's depicted in Band of Brothers, if you've ever seen that. So it was this huge, full-scale attack. They knew we were going to lose a lot of people, but we kind of had to win it. If we didn't, eventually the Battle of the Bulge, which was several months later, was kind of the last big battle in the European theater, big that I'm aware of. And there was more loss of life there than D-Day. But
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but the D-Day really set the tone and really kicked things into gear. So we kind of had to do it. And it was just, if you've seen the movies about it, trying to imagine coming in on those little Higgins boats to the shore, just knowing when you get off there, you're going to enter a barrage of fire, and you're getting off the boat in 6 to 8 feet deep water. A lot of guys drowned getting off, didn't even get to shore. Just crazy stuff like that. And then 80 years later, some of these guys are still here, and them going back to that place.
Amazing. And
reliving it. Some of them had never been back. Some of them have gone back a few times, but now it's the young ones that were there for D-Day, the youngest ones are 97, 98. They're old. Yeah. So then this guy I'm talking to that was 104, he was 24 during D-Day. He was 23 when he joined the Army. He was drafted a little bit older. I was 23 when I joined the Army, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But I just, them being there.
How many of them were there?
Roughly 200. Not all of them were involved in D-Day.
Okay.
But 200 World War II vets.
Wow.
Were there. But a lot of them were involved in D-Day at some level. There's very few left that were first wave on the beach, So one of those men we were supposed to talk to, he actually lives in Normandy now. He's Native American. But he got sick the first day we were there, so he wasn't able to come to stuff. Yeah, he's hanging in there, but that was really a bummer, I think, for him.
Yeah.
Because it's
an opportunity.
He leads this huge delegation of other Native American vets that come out there every year and kind of really connects them with that place, which is cool.
Yeah.
And and also he's turning 100 this month. Like just knowing he's nearing the end, that's tough, you know?
Yeah. Well, even it's just mind blowing to kind of just take a step back and see life through their perspective, and then also like show up there again how many years later, and some of them, you know, having not been back for that whole time, and then just life. Because I think for me, if I was, you know, I'm a female, but at the time, like if I was 18 years old or even 20 years old, like I think about myself at 18, 20, like there's no way I would be able to handle these like big life decisions or even big life fears. But it's like they didn't know what they didn't know, and they just had to, I mean, that was what they were called to do. And when they got off that boat, they didn't know if they were coming back, you know?
Exactly. And it's just, it's also a different time. But, you know, those guys came back and went to work.
Yeah.
Like they were at factories and like, you know, like really blue collar jobs. Like, cause imagine there's only 120 million people in the country at the time. And I think about 4 million of them served in the military. So like 1 in 30.
Yeah.
I might be off on my numbers a bit there, but it's about that. So it's like, it's much more common. So with that, it's probably less revered in some way. You know what I mean? Like people are appreciative, but it's not the same way. It's like, well, that's what everybody
That's what you do.
That's what everybody does. So when you came home, it's like, you know,
welcome back.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the deal. So it's interesting, but you know, they call it the greatest generation for a reason. Like they are a very hardworking, they paved the way for a lot of what we have. And, but with that, the point of the project is to connect them to hopefully our next greatest generation, you know, a younger group of people, and not letting them, not telling them they all need to serve in the military or something like that, but just sort of try to understand what those feelings were like at 18, 20 years old. You know, the same kind of fears and insecurities people have today, but they still did it, you know, it's possible. So that's really what we want to do. We want the stories to like live on, you know, beyond because in 5 more years, definitely 10 more years, there'll be none of them left, you know. So giving them an opportunity to share what they want to share one last time. And I think that's important, you know.
Yeah. What was the idea or the thought that made you want to do this? Because, I mean, you could make a documentary on anything, you know? Yeah.
Well, as I said earlier, the practice fields are called Frank Danius Fields at Texas. And Frank came to every practice, you know, he would stand on the sidelines. This is like in his late 80s, early 90s when I met him. And he would go to every game. He's a big fan, a big supporter of the program. And then I found out he was a D-Day veteran. And not only D-Day, he fought through much of France and eventually was in the Battle of the Bulge up in Belgium, Luxembourg area. And along the way, he earned 4 Silver Stars, which is crazy. Wow. It's one of the highest honors in the military, one of the highest combat awards you can receive, and to get 4 of them is mind-blowing. And, you know, I think he's one of the top 10 most decorated World War II veterans, and all these things I didn't know about him. So I never really got to know much about him and hear his story. And he's passed away now. He died about 5 years ago. And so that was part of the impetus, is like with this 80th anniversary and thinking about Frank. And, you know, I wish I would have got to know him a little better or told his story. A friend of mine, Tim Kolzak, did a beautiful photo essay article about it. Through the Veterans Project, which everyone should check out if you want to learn more about Frank. But yeah, so it was like, well, I'm going to go out there and, you know, hopefully meet some of the people that were there when Frank was there. And that's kind of how it all started.
It's amazing what, you know, because you can have that thought, and so many people have thoughts, right, of whatever, like, oh, it would be cool to do this, but just to see you like constantly have a thought and then act on it throughout your entire life. But in this particular moment, it's going to impact so many people beyond just you know, telling their stories, and then our next generation. When you texted me and you're like, yeah, but I want to portray this story like I'm telling it to, you know, the next 18, 20-year-old, you know, generation. And I'm like, wow, that is, because you're not just it's not just another documentary, like it's.
Well, I don't think any.
You're good storyteller.
I don't know about that. Let's try. We'll see how it turns out, but it's definitely got a good start going, and just being able to be with some of those guys out there. I think we interviewed 5 of them in Normandy, which was cool. And
wow.
Yeah, so we may go back out there to shoot some more, and if Charles is feeling better, we may get an opportunity to spend some time with him. If not, there's still more we need to do here. I want to go out to Baltimore and visit Steve, and Steve Melnikoff is his name, the guy that's 104.
That's amazing.
I know, it's crazy. I've been texting with his daughter, and she's just like, yeah, you should come out, but you should come soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah. That's when we act with a sense of urgency, right? Like soon. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
The way he is, though, and seems, it's like when you're around him, you're like, this guy's going to live to be 120. Like, it just seems like that. He's just so
You're like, how did
sharp,
you? Yeah.
And just gets around, walks around,
I mean, it's one thing to keep your body going, but your mind sharp at that age is
very sharp. He's on his cell phone.
It's
crazy. Oh yeah, he's got an iPhone. He's just
that's crazy.
Flipping through stuff and showing me pictures. And I'm just
that's
crazy.
amazing. Yeah. What is? I guess what's it? Because I know you interviewed a couple of them one-on-one. You said 5 of them. Mm-hmm. What's like one little nugget or a takeaway that you could share that you learned from any of them?
They definitely. I don't want to say downplay. That's not the right word. But they just have this strong sense of humility. The things that they remember and that really stick out with them are, or at least the things they prefer to talk about are not, typically combat related. And I think that's good. I don't need to hear a bunch of war stories. That's not what I'm trying to do. People understand what they did there. You know what I mean? Or if they don't, we'll make sure that they do by other means. But like, we don't need to hear, I don't need this guy to tell me this traumatic story if he doesn't want to talk about it again. But one of the gentlemen named Dennis, he had this dog, Herman, and he just talked about Herman so much. Yeah, Herman the dog.
So cute.
So there were times where it was like, all right, let's pivot a little bit. But then he just would go back, and I'm just like, what am I doing? Let this guy talk about Herman. That's what he wants to talk about.
Yeah.
So, it was very sweet, and just that memory of that dog, because it feels like the dog, in a lot of ways, kind of saved him and
healed him.
Yeah, he had this story of General Patton's dog and his dog that somehow, because he served in Patton's army, and somehow they connected at some point. I can't remember exactly, and I was just like, this is so crazy.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Nate, I don't know if you know this, but for me, I just feel like I'm always in awe of you every time I see you in person, or because you operate with the same humility. And it's just, I appreciate that and I respect that so much. But I have even more respect for what you're continuing to do. And just initially when we started this and I was telling you about this podcast, it's like you realize you're just more invested in other people and other people's stories and getting an opportunity to have a platform and share other people's stories is amazing. I'm really proud of you, but just honored to be a friend.
Thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
that means a lot.
Well, we got to wrap this up today. Maybe down the road after you finish, because how long is this documentary going to take?
Well, ideally, it comes out next year, maybe in May, or at least be able to premiere it at that time, because that's around the end of World War II. That'll be the 80th anniversary of that. Memorial Day is in May, and then June 6th again.
Yeah.
The 81st anniversary right on the corner. So I'd like to, ideally before those things happen, or around the time when those things happen, so you can kind of celebrate those things with the release of the film.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll be looking out for. So we got a little sneak peek then.
Yeah.
The behind the scenes of
a lot of work to do. It takes a long time to finish, especially post. So we got to get cracking.
Yeah. I can only imagine what the actions are behind that to make it happen. Because you can film it and that's all exciting, and then you got to put it all together.
Right.
That's why they have you, the visionary.
Yeah.
To put this
Oh boy,
whole
I need a
thing
lot of
together.
help. Everybody knows that works with me that I cannot do this alone.
So you have a good team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, appreciate you, Nate. We'll have you back maybe in a year and hear the story of how it all came out.
That sounds good, Kristen. Appreciate it.